This is junior high school at last. Right. After more than a year, the great day had finally arrived, my first day of junior high school. It was a warm September morning. 400 brand new students made the auditorium of Shinja Junior High School even stuffier. Some of us had not seen each other for more than a year, and everyone was excitedly picking old classmates out of the sea of new faces. The new school chairman, who had replaced the old principal, was giving us a welcome speech, but we had too much to catch up with among ourselves to pay him much attention. Annie and I leaned forward to hear the boy with protruding ears in the row in front of us. In my brother's factory, the fighting was really serious. Two factions were fighting to lead the revolution in the factory. They both got guns from the army. People were killed with machine guns. My brother saw it with his own eyes. Someone pulled my braid and I turned around. Dang Yi, no longer dressed like a pauper, was smiling at us. What a beautiful sweater, I said. Did you make it yourself? My older sister made it for me. It's a new pattern called double pearls. She proudly stretched her arm out to give us a closer look. Annie grabbed her arm and patted it 3 times. New clothes, 1, 2, 3, she chanted, just as we had when we were little. We all giggled. Are you two inseparables in the same class? Dang Yi teased. No, I said sadly. I'm in class 4 and she's in class 6. What about you? I'm in class 9. Do you happen to know what class Yang Fan is in? Annie glanced nervously at Yang Fan sitting off to our right. I think she's in class 2. What about Du Hai? I asked, trying to control my anxiety. I don't know about the boys. What about Yin Lan Lan then? I asked. Do you know about her? You know about her, don't you? She's in my class, Chen Yi said. My eyes met An Yi's. Ever since we had received our admission letters, we had worried about being in the same class as those 3. Now we did not have to worry about 2 of them. If only Du Hai could be kept far away from us too. The chairman finished his speech. We all crowded out of the auditorium and rushed, laughing and shouting, towards the new classroom building. Let's go home together after class, Anne Yi called as we separated at the 3rd floor. Meet me downstairs. I stopped at room 301. This was my classroom. I paused nervously, wondering about my new classmates and my teachers. Would fate be kind to me? I peeked into the doorway. There were already quite a few people sitting at their places. I looked at the seating chart on the blackboard and went straight to my desk. My deskmate, a plump girl with long pigtails, smiled at me and nodded. My heart was pounding. I looked around the class. There was no one I knew. I scanned the seating chart again. None of my former classmates were in this class. No one in this class knew about my class status. I could make a new start and just be a person like everyone else. I wanted to laugh out loud. Instead, I smiled broadly at my new deskmate. The classroom was much more spacious than my classroom in Shin Air Primary School and brighter. Facing the street were 3 big windows, and I could see the trees and the housetops across the way. The desks and chairs were made of iron and painted orange. The huge blackboard was made of real slate. It gave off a sharp sound when you tapped it, and it would not need to be painted regularly like the wooden ones we had in primary school. As I was still surveying the room, a slim man walked in. The class immediately quieted down. I'm your homeroom teacher. My name is Jiang Xin. As soon as he started speaking, all the students murmured to each other. We were all delighted. His voice was so gentle, and his face was so young. He was sure to be an easygoing teacher. He picked up a piece of chalk and wrote 2 characters, Jiang Xin, in the corner of the blackboard. The rustling stopped at once, and the room became dead quiet. His writing was beautiful and powerful, and the lively and vigorous flourishes in his calligraphy awed us. His handwriting and his voice revealed 2 completely different personalities. Besides introducing himself, Teacher Jiang spoke only 3 sentences. Welcome to class 4. He would teach us English, and we would spend the whole first 2 weeks in political study, reading Central Committee documents and Chairman Mao's works. The day ended with that. It was far less exciting than I had imagined. What a strange teacher, I thought. Full of contradictions and stingy with words. I thought that he would give us at least a tour of the school. I waited for quite a while before Annie's class was over. She was overjoyed because Du Hai was not in her class either. It was a beautiful fall day. Even the 2 plain buildings looked particularly pleasant. The parasol trees lining the sidewalks were straight and tall and seemed to smile at us in the bright sunshine. For more than a year, I had waited at home, bored and depressed by all the news of fighting and by all the struggles at moms and dads' work units. Now all that was over. Finally, I was in junior high school. Though it was not as large as Shi Yi, not as elegant as Shi Yi, I was still excited beyond words. The lovely November sunshine crept into the classroom, shining warmly upon the beautifully written but boring English words on the blackboard. Down with imperialism, down with revisionism, down with the new czars. Teacher Jang was moving his homemade bamboo pointer slowly along these sentences. Over and over, we repeated after him. Some read quickly, some slowly, some at a high pitch, some low. It was a thoroughly unpleasant chorus. When we read "Down with the new czars," someone deliberately dragged out the English phrase and turned it into a Chinese "nu jiaji," beef crackling. The whole class burst out in laughter, and others gleefully imitated him. I glanced at my deskmate, Chong Hong. She was busily writing a speech. I rested my chin upon my hand and sighed. This was the 6th English class of the term. In the first class, Teacher Jang told us that in order to integrate all aspects of our study with the revolution and to prepare us for war, we would learn military and political terms first. When he started with "lay down your arms and we will spare your lives," we were quite interested. Now, after 6 periods, we had learned "long live Chairman Mao," "long live the Chinese Communist Party," and "long live Socialist China." We had learned "stand up," "sit down," and "hands up." Today we were learning "down with." It was boring, and we knew that if we did not learn grammar instead of just phrases, we would never learn English. I watched 2 sparrows twittering and hopping merrily among the naked branches outside the classroom window. When I was little, I had dreamed about attending junior high school. I had heard about the spacious classrooms, the tall buildings, and the huge, well-equipped gymnasiums. It was fascinating to think about all the things you could learn there. Galileo's acceleration experiment, the dissection of rabbits, and making materials change state in a test tube. Junior high school seemed to be wonderful and mysterious palaces. Now that I had entered the palace, I was disappointed. All the classes except for mathematics were completely uninteresting. We had no textbooks, only hastily compiled mimeographed handouts. English class was a bore. Politics class was actually just the familiar Communist Party history. Physics, chemistry, and biology had been replaced by fundamentals of industry and agriculture because of Chairman Mao's instruction to combine education with practical experience. One day, the teacher had brought the wrong handouts to class. He had prepared a lesson on raising pigs, but he had mistakenly brought the handouts titled "The Close Planting System of Rice Growing." He stood awkwardly on the platform for a minute or two, then he dismissed the class. The poor teachers. Trained in the traditional sciences, they were totally lost when trying to teach us about pigs or paddy fields. I heard a roar of laughter from the back of the class. Probably someone had told another joke. I raised my head and saw Teacher Jang standing with his back towards us, reading all by himself, "Down with Imperialism." A boy sitting in the last row threw something to another boy halfway across the room. Pudge was hunched over, crotcheting a tablecloth under her desk. Four Eyes had taken his glasses off, rested his head on his desk, and began to snore loudly. The bell rang. I put my pencil box into my desk and stood up to stretch. "Attention, please." Teacher Jang rapped his pointer on his desk. "The next period will be a study hall. You can study Chairman Mao's works by yourselves." He had to speak loudly to be heard. He was probably as tired of reading newspapers and Central Committee documents as we were, so he had decided to let us while away the time by ourselves. It was disgraceful. The boy in the front row turned around and made a face at the rest of the class. Suddenly, a voice asked, "Teacher Jang, since it's self-study, can we go home to do it?" The whole class fell silent. We looked around and saw Bai Shan's tall, thin form standing beside his desk. He looked straight at Teacher Jang, with his face as frank and sincere as usual. Teacher Jang stared back at Bai Shan. At first, he looked a little uncomfortable, but after a few seconds of silence, he said calmly, "You can go home if you're sure you'll study." Bai Shan unhurriedly put his things in his school bag and said, "I'm sure." He left the classroom with his unfashionable blue rayon jacket fluttering as he walked. The whole class exploded in chatter. "What kind of attitude is that? That's insulting to Chairman Mao." Chang Hong was quite indignant. "He said he would study at home." I disagreed with her. I understood his anger about the English class. In fact, I admired him, and I was glad that he had the courage to do something about it. I remembered our last physical education class. As a part of our preparation for war, we were supposed to practice crawling under wires and climbing over wooden obstacles. When the teacher had asked the boys to get the gym mats, the boys had just looked at each other without moving. Without respect, what could the poor man do? At this embarrassing moment, Bai Shan had caught the eye of his 2 best friends. The 3 of them had moved toward the mats, and all at once the rest of the boys followed them. I found him a very interesting boy.